A tempest rages across the North Sea, waves crashing violently against the hull of King James VI's ship. The king, drenched and pale, grips the railing, his eyes wide with terror. He believes this storm is no mere act of nature, but a sinister plot against his life. As the ship battles the elements, whispers of witchcraft ripple through Scotland. Villagers gather in dimly lit taverns, their faces illuminated by flickering torches, exchanging tales of dark magic and conspiracies against the crown. The atmosphere thickens with dread. The storm finally subsides, leaving wreckage strewn along the coastline. As debris washes ashore, the rumors intensify. If the king himself is vulnerable to witchcraft, then every man, woman, and child becomes a potential target for suspicion and fear. In the heart of Scotland, officials begin to seek explanations beyond the natural world. They pore over ancient texts and consult with theologians, convinced that the wrath of witches is upon them. The air grows thick with paranoia. As fear spreads like wildfire, the question emerges: how does the paranoia of a single monarch transform into a decree that can condemn entire communities? The power of belief begins to take root, threatening to engulf the kingdom. In the villages, the atmosphere grows increasingly tense. Neighbors eye each other with suspicion, and the slightest misfortune, a sick child, a failed crop, becomes fodder for accusations. The fabric of society begins to fray. As the king's fear takes hold, the line between reality and superstition blurs. Officials, driven by the need to protect the crown, prepare to hunt down those they suspect of witchcraft, fueled by an urgency that overrides reason. The storm that threatened King James VI becomes a catalyst for chaos, igniting a fear that will soon spiral out of control. The kingdom stands on the brink of a deadly witch panic, with consequences that will echo through history. With the king's paranoia now a potent force, the question lingers: how far will this fear spread, and what horrors will it unleash upon the realm? The stage is set for a reckoning that will reshape Scotland forever. From an early age, James VI was steeped in tales of dark forces and divine retribution. Raised in a court filled with theologians, he absorbed their fervent warnings about the ever-present threat of the devil lurking in everyday life. As he matured, James's worldview was further shaped by the ominous stories of witches and their sinister powers. He began to see the devil's hand in political rivalries, interpreting every misfortune as a sign of malevolent forces at work against him. His marriage voyage to Denmark in 1589 introduced him to the continent's rich lore of witchcraft. There, he encountered the belief that storms could be conjured by witches, a notion that would haunt him deeply upon his return to Scotland. Back in Scotland, James immersed himself in treatises on sorcery, each page feeding his growing paranoia. He became convinced that unseen forces were conspiring against his reign, threatening his very existence as king. James began to perceive himself not just as a monarch, but as a warrior chosen by God to combat the forces of evil. This self-image transformed his fears into a sense of divine mission, intensifying his obsession with witchcraft. Every political challenge he faced was now shrouded in suspicion. James interpreted dissent as a manifestation of dark magic, leading him to view his court as a battlefield in a cosmic struggle between good and evil. As his reign progressed, the king's fixation on witchcraft began to seep into the fabric of Scottish society. His proclamations against sorcery resonated with the populace, igniting a collective fear that soon spiraled out of control. James VI's growing obsession with the supernatural compelled him to seek out those he deemed responsible for his misfortunes. His fear transformed into a relentless pursuit of witches, setting the stage for a catastrophic witch hunt. With each passing day, the line between reality and paranoia blurred for James. His conviction that he was engaged in a holy war against the devil would soon lead to dire consequences for Scotland and its people. In the coastal town of North Berwick, whispers of dark gatherings grew louder. Villagers spoke of a ruined kirk, its stones weathered and cracked, where shadows danced under the moonlight, hinting at sinister rites. The air was thick with tension, as fear gripped the hearts of those who dared to listen. The church, once a place of solace, now stood as a symbol of dread, echoing with the tales of witchcraft that spread like wildfire. As the rumors intensified, the king's paranoia reached a fever pitch. James VI, a man in his late 30s with a sharp face and piercing blue eyes, became obsessed with the notion that witches were conspiring against him. His mind, once filled with visions of divine rule, now swirled with nightmares of betrayal. He believed the storm that threatened his life was conjured by those who sought to undermine his authority, igniting a relentless hunt for the alleged coven. Under the weight of torture, confessions began to emerge from the accused. Men and women, their faces gaunt and eyes hollow from fear, claimed to have met the devil in the kirk. They spoke of infernal banquets filled with grotesque feasts and whispered of dark pacts made under the cover of night. Each confession, wrung from them through agony, fed the king's obsession, further entrenching the belief that a coven was plotting his demise. James personally oversaw the interrogations, his presence amplifying the terror felt by the prisoners. As they were subjected to sleep deprivation and relentless questioning, their minds began to fracture. The king, eager for confirmation of his fears, pushed them to elaborate on their tales. The more outrageous the claims became, the more convinced he grew. Each confession spiraled into a darker narrative, feeding the frenzy of witchcraft accusations that consumed the kingdom. As the confessions spread, so too did the fear among the townsfolk. Anyone seen speaking to the accused risked being implicated in the growing witch hunt. Neighbors turned against one another, friendships shattered under the weight of suspicion. The once tight-knit community of North Berwick became a battleground of paranoia, where even the slightest misfortune could lead to accusations of witchcraft, fueling the flames of hysteria ignited by the crown. The king's obsession with the North Berwick Coven led to a series of public trials where the accused were paraded before the townspeople. Their faces, once familiar, now twisted in fear and despair, became symbols of the madness that gripped Scotland. Spectators gathered, drawn by morbid curiosity as the trials unfolded, each verdict echoing the king's fears. The atmosphere was charged with dread, as the line between justice and cruelty blurred. As the witch hunts escalated, the tales of the North Berwick Coven grew increasingly elaborate. Accusations of flying to the kirk on broomsticks and summoning storms became common. The king, fueled by these wild stories, saw himself as a target of a grand conspiracy, a divine ruler beset by evil. The fabric of society began to unravel, as fear transformed neighbors into enemies, and the quest for truth became overshadowed by the thirst for scapegoats. The North Berwick Coven became a focal point of the king's fears, a manifestation of his paranoia that spiraled beyond reason. As the trials continued, the kingdom braced itself for the inevitable fallout. With each confession, the witch hunt grew more fervent, drawing in innocent lives caught in the crossfire of royal terror. The air was thick with tension, and the specter of witchcraft loomed larger than ever, threatening to consume all of Scotland. The North Berwick Coven's legacy would intertwine with the very identity of Scotland, as the fear of witchcraft took root in the hearts of its people. The king's relentless pursuit of the devil's agents would lead to a dark chapter in history, one that would echo for generations. As the kingdom prepared for the next wave of accusations, the question lingered: how far would the crown go to eradicate the perceived threat of witchcraft? In the dimly lit chambers of Scottish courts, the sound of metal clanging against wood echoed ominously. Thumbscrews tightened mercilessly, the sharp crack of bones breaking punctuating the cries of the accused, their faces twisted in agony. The infamous boot became a tool of terror, its wooden frame designed to crush legs under wedges. Each scream resonated through the hall, a chilling reminder of the lengths to which the crown would go to extract confessions. Sleep deprivation became a weapon, stripping away sanity. Suspects, haunted by exhaustion, began to hallucinate, their minds unraveling under the relentless pressure to confess to crimes they had not committed. Witch prickers roamed the courts, their needles poised to pierce flesh in search of the devil's mark. Each jab was a test of faith and pain, as bloodless skin became evidence of guilt in a world turned upside down. Confessions flowed under duress, each word wrung from the lips of the tortured. The more pain inflicted, the more accusations multiplied, creating a cycle where fear became the only truth recognized by the courts. Families were dragged into the machinery of torture, their fates intertwined with the accusations of witchcraft. The stench of sweat and smoke filled the air, mingling with the sounds of despair echoing off the stone walls. As the witch hunts escalated, entire communities turned on one another. Neighbors once friendly now eyed each other with suspicion, every misfortune blamed on sorcery, fueling the flames of paranoia. The relentless pursuit of witches transformed the landscape of Scotland. The courts became theaters of cruelty, where the line between justice and madness blurred, leaving a scar that would last for generations. As fear gripped the nation, the very fabric of society began to fray. Each confession, each execution, only deepened the shadows of doubt, hinting at a reckoning that loomed just beyond the horizon. As King James VI's fears seeped into the fabric of society, local magistrates began to act on the royal mandate. Accusations of witchcraft flourished, fueled by the king's paranoia and the fervor of the clergy. Misfortunes became the breeding ground for suspicion. A farmer's sickly cow drew the ire of neighbors, who whispered that a witch had cursed it. The air thickened with fear, transforming ordinary disputes into deadly accusations. In churches across Scotland, ministers delivered impassioned sermons, warning congregants that the devil walked among them. Their words ignited the flames of hysteria, urging the faithful to root out evil wherever it lurked. Across the moors, the landscape mirrored the turmoil within communities. Rumors spread like wildfire, and neighbors turned against one another, driven by fear and the desire to protect themselves from the witch hunts. Accusations became a tool for settling old scores. A woman, her face lined with worry, pointed accusingly at her rival, claiming witchcraft, while the crowd around them gasped in horror, ready to believe the worst. The king's endorsement of the witch hunts created a chilling atmosphere where even the slightest misfortune could lead to dire consequences. Communities fractured, trust eroded, and fear became a currency of power. As the witch hunts intensified, the very fabric of society began to unravel. Families turned against each other, and the once vibrant communities became battlegrounds of suspicion, where every shadow held a secret. With every accusation, the fear of witchcraft grew, and the kingdom became ensnared in a web of paranoia. The cries of the innocent echoed through the land, drowned out by the relentless pursuit of supposed evil. As the panic spread, the lines between reality and paranoia blurred. The kingdom was now a stage for fear, and the consequences of the king's beliefs would soon reveal their devastating impact on Scotland. As King James VI's fears intensified, a new breed of men emerged, self-proclaimed witch-finders. These ministers and magistrates traveled from village to village, fueled by ambition and the king's unwavering belief in the supernatural. With each accusation they made, these witch-finders solidified their influence, often preaching about the dangers of witchcraft from pulpit and platform. Their fervor turned suspicion into a weapon, igniting paranoia in every corner of Scotland. Some witch-finders acted out of genuine zeal, believing they were serving both God and the king. Others, however, sought personal gain, using the chaos to settle scores or seize property, further entrenching fear in their communities. As the witch-finders interrogated suspects, the methods they employed mirrored the brutal practices sanctioned by the crown. Torture became commonplace, and confessions were often extracted through sheer terror, reinforcing the cycle of accusation. Villagers, desperate to protect themselves, began to accuse their neighbors. This climate of fear turned friends into foes, as the witch-finders exploited the chaos, leaving a trail of suspicion and death in their wake. The witch-finders became infamous, their names synonymous with terror. They traveled the countryside, stirring hysteria wherever they went, as communities fell into madness, haunted by the specter of witchcraft. Amidst the chaos, some began to question the legitimacy of the witch trials. Skepticism crept into the hearts of those who once fervently believed, as the absurdity of accusations grew too loud to ignore. Yet, the witch-finders pressed on, emboldened by the king's support. Their relentless pursuit of supposed witches only fueled the flames of fear, as the lines between justice and persecution blurred further. As the witch hunt escalated, the very fabric of society began to unravel. The consequences of unchecked zealotry loomed large, setting the stage for a reckoning that would challenge the foundations of belief. As the witch hunts continued, the fervor that once gripped Scotland began to show cracks. Judges, once zealous in their pursuit, now hesitated as confessions grew increasingly bizarre and implausible, raising concerns about their validity. In Edinburgh, King James VI, now in his late 30s with deepening lines around his eyes, began to question the methods employed in the name of his crown. His once unshakable belief in witchcraft faced its first real challenge. Scholars and theologians gathered in candlelit chambers, debating the morality of spectral evidence. Some argued that the devil could deceive judges with illusions, while others clung to their convictions, deepening the rift among the learned. As doubt spread, the once unified front of witch-finders began to fracture. Some ministers voiced concerns over the ethics of their actions, questioning whether they were truly serving God or merely fueling a cycle of fear. The atmosphere shifted in villages across Scotland. Neighbors who once stood united now eyed each other with suspicion, as the fear of being accused turned friends into foes, and trust eroded like the stones of a crumbling wall. In the courts, cases began to collapse as contradictions emerged. Accused individuals, once tortured into submission, now recanted their stories, revealing the depths of coercion and despair they had endured. The witch-finding machinery, once relentless, began to sputter. Reports of fantastical confessions circulated, leading some to question the integrity of the entire witch hunt. Doubt was slowly taking root in the hearts of many. For the first time in years, the weight of fear was met with the lightness of doubt. As whispers of skepticism grew louder, the future of the witch hunts hung precariously in the balance, teetering on the edge of change. In the wake of the witch hunts, King James VI publicly denounced the very methods he once endorsed. He condemned the misuse of torture and the wrongful trials that had devastated countless lives across Scotland. As the fervor subsided, the remnants of fear lingered in communities. Families torn apart by accusations struggled to rebuild their lives, haunted by the specter of betrayal and loss that had swept through their villages. The scars of the witch hunts ran deep, leaving emotional and psychological wounds that would affect generations. Many survivors carried the weight of their experiences, unable to escape the memories of terror and injustice. Historians now examine this dark chapter as a cautionary tale, illustrating how unchecked belief at the highest levels can lead to widespread devastation. The legacy of fear and paranoia became embedded in the national psyche. In the decades that followed, Scotland slowly began to heal. Yet the memory of the witch hunts served as a reminder of the dangers of mass hysteria. The echoes of accusations still reverberated in the hearts of the people. The witch hunts left behind a legacy of vigilance against tyranny and oppression. The lessons learned from this dark period would shape future generations, urging them to question authority and seek justice. As modern Scotland reflects on its past, the story of the witch hunts serves as a stark reminder of the fragility of reason in the face of fear. The potential for panic remains, lurking in the shadows of society. The question remains, how easily could such a panic happen again? As history teaches us, the seeds of fear can take root in any era, reminding us of the importance of vigilance and compassion.